Hello, you wonderful beers and doers, and beettes and duets. In this video, I'm going to comment on the state of the world and on the fact that it's getting sillier and sillier. I'll tell you why on the other side. Now, for some time, I have been getting the deep ingrained sense that this world is fucking off its rocker. And as time moves on, it's getting further and further. The rocker's here and the world's over here now. You know, before it was just off its rocker, but now it's here. Now it's like there. What's going on? What is going on? And all of the commentators, the big voices, or the awakened voices, I'm hearing them say exactly the same. I was listening to Candace Owen the other day, and she's saying everything's fake and gay in the world, right? She uses the word gay. Obviously, it's got a new connotation from when I was a kid, when that comedian would say, "Oh, what a gay day." Okay? Who was that? I can't remember his name. He used to also say, "Shut that door. There's a terrible draft in here." What was his name? Can't remember. Anyway, you'll tell me. Tell me in the comments what his name was. So Candace was saying, in this, just conversing, saying the whole world is a psyop and that we're living in a virtual reality. This is all a virtual reality, okay? And everything's fake. Now, this is what I've been feeling for a good old while, and never more so than now. I read a beautiful post from Max Egan, who's done tremendous work, and he was saying the same thing, that we're going through very difficult times because we're in the time of the revelation. And I never knew what the revelation was going to be like. I read the revelation in the Bible. Doesn't make a lot of sense. It's a mess. It's a mess. I mean, it is an absolute mess. And people try and make sense of it, and they can't really. I mean, I often pluck things out of Revelation, but reading the whole book is awful. It's awful. And I know, because I've done it, because I was a Jehovah's Witness and I was forced to read Revelation. Not only was I forced to read it, I was forced to study it and to make sense of it. But I never thought that the revelation, the true revelation, was going to be this. This stepping into madness, this moving from the sublime, we've been sublime for a while, into the ridiculous. And now we're in the ridiculous. I mean, it truly is ridiculous. And I said to the emissaries, I asked them, why? What the flock is going on? Because I don't swear with them. Sometimes I do a little bit, but not much. What on earth is going on? And they said, which is something they talked about a long time ago. They said, we're in the revelation. The revelation is the illumination of everything. The light is coming on. And so they said, what's happened is the light has come on and it's getting very bloody bright. So bright that sometimes you don't even want to look at it. And they said, what you're seeing is what's always been. It's always been here. The only difference is that before we were in the dark and we didn't know. What we just knew was what was being told to us. We were there in the dark, blinded, and we had voices telling us what was around us, and we were going, yes, of course. And our imaginations were imagining what it was, bringing it to life, let's say that. And so we had this. We knew it was solid. This is what our world was. And then linked with the increasing of the energies, the dial was turned up and we started to see things like, I don't think I like the look of that. That looks a little bit corrupt to me in one little place. Then the light kept getting brighter and we kept saying, oh, and that's corrupt, and that's rotten, and that's horrible, and that's awful. And suddenly we discover ourselves standing in the same room that we've been in for all of our life, except we can see into the corners we can see beyond the shadows. And what we see is something horrible. It's an aberration. And what the emissary said, which was an interesting point, is they said, what's happening is that we are having a massive problem reconciling what we believe we should be seeing, what we believe should be happening, and what is actually happening and what we're actually seeing. We can't reconcile it because we've come from a place of, well, everything was fine. Everything was fine. Go back to I don't know, the year 2000. It was all right. Everything was all right. And now we're in this place where no matter where we look, it's horrible. But it's always been here. It's always been horrible since the start of this timeline. Everything was kicked into gear as horrible. We just didn't see it. And now we do. And a beautiful kind of analogy that came to mind, that the emissaries brought to mind, was this. When I was a kid, right, I was a Jehovah's Witness, and it was a horrible life, except for a handful of moments. We had loads of parties, right? They were very social people, obviously, because they're a small group, very social. We had loads of parties. We went on a holiday together, and we had trips away. They were just the best. The parties were great, and we always had games in the parties. Games which I still do to this day with my children in parties. We still do the same kind of games. One of the games was called Airplane. And what happened was all the children had to wait outside of the room. One child would be let in, blindfolded, okay? And they would be told that they were going to go on an airplane ride. And so 2 adults would get them to say, right, climb on the airplane. And what they would have is a board, right? A board, like a wooden board, and the child would have to stand on the wooden board. Then they would say, right, you're going up in the air. And they would start to lift the board up. Now, to the child, they were on the airplane and it was going up and up and up and up. And then it would get so high that the head would hit the ceiling. Okay? To that point, the kids, they had a hold of the adult's hand, but you weren't happy. I'm at the ceiling now, and there's lots of movement on the board. And then an adult would say, the plane is in trouble. You have to jump. You're going to have to jump. And your head's on the ceiling, and you have to jump. And they're going, it's going to crash, jump, jump, jump. And of course, you had to jump off. And it was terrifying. I remember the first time, because it's just a one-time thing, I was terrified. And I jumped off, expecting to have this terrible splat landing, and I was an inch off the ground. And so nothing happened. I just went dunk. Okay? So what the game is that the child stands on a wooden board, and then the parents, the adults, shake it a lot and lift it that far off the ground. And then another 2 parents bring down we used to use like a board game, a Monopoly board. Bring it down and touch the board on the child's head. Of course, the child's blindfolded. And so it thinks, because it's been told you're going up to the ceiling, it thinks that that's the ceiling. And so the board is only that much off the ground. The emissaries reminded me of that, because what would happen after the child had had the experience and just about shit themselves, they would then take the blindfold off and they would look and they would see that it wasn't an aeroplane, it was a wooden board. And then when they watched the other child, they would see the Monopoly board being pressed on the head and they would think, wow, that's nothing like I thought it was. That is nothing. What was I so scared of? And that, my dear friends, is exactly what we've been living. Blindfolded in the dark with people telling us what it is that's happening around us. And then the light's coming on, the blindfold is off, and we're looking. This is exactly where we are now. We're looking going, well, that is a load of shit. That doesn't even make sense. That's not real. That's where we are. And I remember when I actually saw, when the blindfold came off and I saw that it was a plank of wood and a Monopoly box, I was disappointed. I was disappointed and I was shocked, and I was disappointed with myself for having believed it. And that's where we are. We're having to go through a disappointment of, why on earth did I ever believe this? In fact, how on earth did I ever believe this? How was I tricked? Well, you were tricked because you had a blindfold on. And the plan of the Great Awakening is to turn the light on, and it's awful. And it's awful. What we are having to see, what we are having to observe in this world is awful, but it's always been here. It always has. But what happens the next time you step on the board and somebody says to you, it's an aeroplane and you're going up? You think, no, it's not. And then they say, you're going to jump, oh, it's going to be so far. And then you think, no, it won't. That's exactly where we are now. Everything we see, no, it isn't. No, you haven't. No, you won't. It's not a great place to be, but it's a very safe place to be. Because you know that there's no fear. You know that there's no danger. You know that it's not real. It's a theatre show. That when the lights come up and you see, all the magic disappears. All the mystery disappears. That's where we are now. There is no mystery to this. Is it pleasant to look at? No, it's horrible. It's horrific. It's a monster. But at least we know what it is now. And we won't be fooled again. Famous line from The Who. Okay, I love you all, and I'll speak to you all later. What have you been seeing of late, now that the lights have been turned up? Put it in the comments. I love you all. Bye-bye.